Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands as the alien ship's engine finally purred to life. The massive Carillion freighter had been dead in space for 3 days, its crew growing more agitated by the hour. But Marcus had a gift with machines that spoke any language, whether they hummed with Earth electricity or pulsed with exotic alien energy. "Your payment, human." Captain Zarath clicked her mandibles in what Marcus had learned was satisfaction. The insectoid alien transferred credits to his account with a gesture of her 4-fingered hand. Marcus nodded and packed his tools. 3 years working the Outer Rim stations had taught him that reputation mattered more than species. Fix enough ships, and even the most xenophobic aliens would grudgingly respect your skills. The Carillion freighter lifted off with a deep thrum that vibrated through the station's hull. "Not bad for a day's work," Marcus muttered, checking his account. Enough credits to keep his workshop running for another month, maybe 2 if he was careful. The workshop sat in the lower levels of Nexus Station, a sprawling commercial hub where a dozen species traded goods and services. Down here, the air recyclers worked overtime, and the lighting cast everything in harsh shadows. It wasn't glamorous, but it was home. Marcus had just settled into his workbench when the door chimed. He looked up to see an alien he'd never encountered before. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, with pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer like water. Her features were sharp and angular, almost predatory, with silver eyes that reflected light like a cat's. Most striking were the intricate tattoos that covered her arms, not ink, but something that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. "You are the human mechanic," she said. Her voice carried harmonics that made his spine tingle. "That's me, Marcus Chen. What can I fix for you, Miss Lady Veltar of House Nix area?" She said it like he should know the name. When he didn't react, her silver eyes narrowed. "Your species truly is as ignorant as reported." Marcus bit back his first response and tried diplomacy. "I'm just a mechanic, Lady Veltar. If you need repairs, I'm your man. If you need political education, you'll want to try the upper levels." She circled his workshop like she was stalking prey, those silver eyes taking in every detail, his collection of tools from a dozen worlds. The half-assembled engines that served as test subjects, the small living area where he slept when work ran late. "You fixed the Carillion vessel today," she said. "Word travels fast." Captain Zarath was effusive in her praise. She claimed you accomplished in hours what their own engineers could not manage in days. Marcus shrugged. "Sometimes you need fresh eyes on a problem." Or perhaps, Veltar's voice dropped to a dangerous purr, your species possesses capabilities that threaten the natural order. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Marcus had dealt with hostile aliens before, but something about this one made his survival instincts scream warnings. "Look, if this is about territory or trade routes, you've got the wrong guy. I fix engines." "Nothing more." Veltar stopped her, circling directly in front of his workbench. "The Nixarian Empire has maintained dominance in this sector for 3,000 years. We are apex predators, evolved hunters whose very presence commands submission from lesser species. Yet here you stand, human, showing no deference, no fear. Should I be afraid?" Her laugh was like broken glass. "Your species arrived in this galaxy mere decades ago, yet already you insert yourselves into affairs beyond your comprehension. You trade with species that should rightfully serve us. You solve problems that should require generations of study. You upset balances that have existed since before your world knew fire." Marcus set down his sonic wrench carefully. "So what do you want from me?" "Demonstration." She touched something at her belt, and the workshop's main lights dimmed. "Your species claims to be adaptable, resourceful. I wish to test these claims." "And if I refuse?" "You will not refuse." Her smile revealed teeth that were definitely designed for tearing flesh. Because refusal would mean admitting that humanity is just another prey species, unworthy of the reputation that precedes you. Before Marcus could respond, she activated a device that projected a holographic arena around them. The walls of his workshop vanished, replaced by what looked like an alien coliseum. Thousands of seats filled with spectators from dozens of species, all focused on the central floor where Marcus now stood. Welcome, beings of the galaxy, to a demonstration of human capability. Veltar's voice boomed through hidden speakers. This human claims his species deserves recognition among the starfaring races. I shall provide him the opportunity to prove this claim. Marcus looked around the arena, noting exits and potential weapons. This seems like overkill for a simple skills test. Oh, human! Veltar's smile grew wider. The test has not yet begun. She pulled another device from her belt and activated it. The air in the arena shimmered, and Marcus heard something that made his blood run cold, a hunting roar that spoke of endless hunger and merciless efficiency. Meet Kethara, Veltar announced to the crowd. Apex predator of the Nyx-Aryan hunting preserves. She has killed in every environment, against every type of prey. She is perfection incarnate. The shimmer resolved into a creature that belonged in nightmares. 8 feet long, powerfully built like a cross between a panther and a wolf, but scaled instead of furred. Its scales shifted color constantly, adapting to its surroundings. 6 eyes tracked Marcus with predatory intelligence, and when it opened its mouth, he saw rows of teeth that could shred steel. The rules are simple, Veltar continued. Survive until Kethara grows bored with the hunt, and I will acknowledge that humanity has earned its place in the galaxy. Fail. She shrugged eloquently. Marcus backed away from the creature, his mind racing. No weapons except what he carried in his tool belt. No armor except his work clothes. No allies except his own wits. Kethara began to circle him, moving with liquid grace. Her scales shifted to match the arena floor, making her nearly invisible except for those 6 glowing eyes. She was testing him, learning his movement patterns, looking for weakness. The crowd had gone silent, leaning forward in anticipation. Marcus could feel their expectations like a physical weight. Some hoped to see the upstart human torn apart. Others seemed genuinely curious about what he would do. Any last words, human? Veltar called. Marcus pulled his plasma cutter from his tool belt and checked the charge. Not much of a weapon against a creature like this, but it was what he had. Yeah, he called back, never taking his eyes off Kethara. I've got just one thing to say. The creature tensed, preparing to spring. I hope you're better at running than you are at hunting. Kethara launched herself at him with incredible speed, claws extended and jaws wide. Marcus dove to one side, rolling across the arena floor and coming up in a sprint. The crowd gasped as he ran straight toward the arena wall, but instead of trying to escape, Marcus began to climb. His years of working in zero gravity had given him an intuitive understanding of momentum and leverage. He scaled the wall like it was a ladder, using tiny imperfections in the surface that other species would never notice. Kethara slammed into the wall below him, confused. She was built for ground pursuit, not vertical climbing. She tried to follow, her claws scraping against the smooth surface, but couldn't maintain a grip. Marcus reached a maintenance panel 30 feet up the wall. His plasma cutter made short work of the locking mechanism, and he disappeared into the ventilation system. The crowd erupted in confusion. Some cheered, others roared in outrage. Veltar stood frozen, her silver eyes wide with disbelief. Inside the ventilation system, Marcus smiled grimly. Let's see how good an apex predator you are in an environment where being big and strong doesn't matter. The real hunt was just beginning. Marcus crawled through the ventilation system, his mechanics instincts mapping the station's internal structure. Every space station followed similar principles. Air needed to circulate, power needed to flow, and maintenance needed access. 3 years of emergency repairs had taught him to read a station's skeleton like a blueprint. Behind him, he could hear Cathara's frustrated snarls echoing through the arena. The crowd's noise was muffled but still audible: confusion, excitement, and what sounded like betting on the outcome. He reached a junction where 3 ducks met and paused to think. The arena was a holographic projection overlaid on his workshop, but the ventilation system was real. That meant he could access other parts of the station if he was clever about it. Marcus pulled out his multi-scanner and checked for energy signatures. The arena's projectors were drawing massive power from the station's main grid. If he could overload them, the simulation would collapse and level the playing field. A metallic scraping sound echoed through the duct behind him. Marcus cursed under his breath. Cathara had figured out how to climb after all. Her claws sparked against the metal walls as she forced her way through spaces barely large enough for her muscled frame. Marcus moved faster, following the power conduits toward the station's central core. The ducts grew warmer as he approached the main generators. Behind him, Cathara's pursuit grew more frantic. The enclosed space was working against her predatory instincts, making her claustrophobic and angry. He reached a maintenance shaft that led directly to the power distribution center. Marcus popped the access hatch and dropped into a chamber filled with humming machinery. Banks of processors and power converters lined the walls, their surfaces warm to the touch. Marcus found the control panel for the arena projectors and smiled. The Nyxarians had impressive technology, but they thought like hunters, not engineers. They'd focused on making the system powerful and intimidating, not secure. His plasma cutter sliced through the protective casing, exposing the delicate circuitry inside. But instead of simply destroying it, Marcus began to rewire. If you're going to break something, he'd learned, it's better to make it work for you first. A crash echoed through the maintenance shaft as Cathara broke through the duct grating. She landed in the chamber with predatory grace, her 6 eyes immediately locking onto Marcus. Her scales had shifted to a deep red color that spoke of rage and frustration. "Clever little prey," she growled, her voice carrying harmonics that made the machinery vibrate. "But there is nowhere left to run." Marcus didn't look up from his work. "Who said anything about running?" Cathara stalked toward him, moving carefully in the confined space. Her claws extended, ready to tear him apart. Marcus finished his rewiring and triggered the modified system. The arena around them didn't disappear. It transformed. Instead of an empty coliseum, holographic machinery materialized everywhere. Engine components, power systems, control interfaces, all the complex technology that Marcus understood better than any predator. Cathara found herself surrounded by spinning turbine blades and crackling energy conduits. Her predatory instincts, evolved for natural environments, couldn't process the artificial landscape. She swung at a holographic engine block and stumbled when her claws passed through empty air. "Welcome to my world," Marcus said, stepping around a projected fusion reactor like it was solid matter. Years of working in zero-gravity and cramped engine compartments had taught him to navigate complex 3-dimensional spaces without thinking. The crowd's confusion was audible even through the chamber walls. They'd expected a simple hunt, predator versus prey. Instead, they were watching something unprecedented, a human turning the environment itself into a weapon. Cathara roared in frustration and charged at Marcus, but he was already moving. He slid under a holographic power coupling, rolled between the legs of a projected maintenance robot, and came up behind her. The plasma cutter in his hand wasn't much of a weapon, but it didn't need to be. Marcus had studied the creature during their first encounter, and his mechanic's eye had noticed something important. Those color-changing scales weren't just camouflage. They were biomechanical, responsive to neural impulses. And like any technological system, they had vulnerabilities. He touched the plasma cutter to the base of Cathara's neck, where the scales connected to her nervous system. A brief pulse of energy, precisely calibrated, and her adaptive camouflage went haywire. Cathara's scales began shifting through random colors: brilliant purple, electric blue, blazing orange. The pattern was so disorienting that she lost her balance and crashed into a holographic control panel. "What have you done?" she snarled. "System override," Marcus replied calmly. "Your scales are trying to camouflage you for about 30 different environments at once. Should clear up in a few hours." The crowd had gone completely silent. Veltar's voice echoed through the arena, tight with disbelief. "This is impossible. Cathara is an apex predator. Humans are prey species." Marcus walked over to where Cathara lay tangled in holographic cables, her disoriented scales making her look like a living rainbow. Up close, he could see the intelligence in her 6 eyes, and something that might have been respect. "You know," he said conversationally, "I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about humans being prey species." He sat down cross-legged beside the confused predator, close enough that she could have killed him easily if she could focus properly. "The thing is, you're not wrong. Humans are prey species. We're not the biggest, strongest, or fastest things on our world. We're not venomous or armored or camouflaged. If you dropped one of us naked into a forest with a pack of wolves, we'd probably end up as dinner." Cathara's eyes focused on him with effort. "Then how?" "Because being prey taught us something that being an apex predator never could. We learned that the environment matters more than personal strength. We learned to use tools, to adapt, to think our way around problems that teeth and claws couldn't solve." Marcus gestured to the holographic machinery around them. "Every piece of technology in this station exists because some human, somewhere, was too weak to do something the obvious way. So we built machines to do it for us. We turned our weakness into our greatest strength." He stood up and looked directly at Veltar, whose silver eyes were wide with something that might have been understanding. "You want to know what makes humans dangerous? It's not that we're strong. It's that we're weak, and we've spent our entire evolutionary history learning to compensate for that weakness in ways you've never had to imagine." Marcus walked over to Cathara and extended his hand. "Come on, beautiful. Let's get you sorted out." The great predator looked at his outstretched hand with confusion. No prey species had ever offered to help an apex predator. But something in Marcus's calm confidence made her extend one massive paw. He helped her to her feet, stabilizing her when the disorienting scale patterns made her stumble. Then, to the absolute amazement of everyone watching, Marcus swung himself up onto her back. "What are you doing?" Veltar demanded. Marcus patted Cathara's neck gently. "Well, you wanted a demonstration of human adaptability. I figured riding an apex predator through the galaxy might make your point better than just beating one in a fight." Cathara's scales began to stabilize, the random color shifts slowing down. Her 6 eyes fixed on Marcus with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You could have killed me when my systems failed," she said quietly. "Yeah, I could have, but where's the fun in that?" For the first time since the encounter began, Cathara's lips curved in what might have been a smile. "You are not prey," she said. "You are something else entirely." Marcus grinned and looked up at Veltar. "So, Lady Veltar, of House Nyx Aria, have I demonstrated enough human capability for you? Or should we take this show on the road?" Veltar stared at them, human mechanic and apex predator sitting together like old friends, and realized that everything she thought she knew about the natural order of the galaxy had just been turned upside down. The crowd erupted in chaos, but Marcus barely heard them. He was already thinking about where they might go next, what other impossible things they might accomplish together. After all, he'd always wanted to see more of the galaxy. 6 months later, the sight of a human riding a Nixarian apex predator through the corridors of Galactic Central Station no longer caused panic. It still caused plenty of stares, but Marcus had learned to live with being the center of attention. Cathara padded through the main concourse with liquid grace, her scales now a comfortable deep blue that Marcus had learned meant contentment. Their partnership had evolved beyond anyone's expectations, including their own. "Docking Bay 12, Marcus said, checking his datapad. "Looks like we've got a crystalline collective vessel with drive problems." Cathara rumbled in acknowledgement. She'd learned to understand more human technology than most aliens managed in decades of study. Her predatory instincts, it turned out, were excellent for diagnosing mechanical problems. She could sense stress patterns in metal the way she once tracked wounded prey. The last 6 months had taken them across 3 sectors and 47 different worlds. Word of the human and his impossible pet had spread through the galaxy's communication networks faster than hyperspace travel. Some called them a curiosity. Others called them a threat to the established order. Everyone agreed they were worth seeing. What none of them expected was how effective the partnership would become. Marcus had always been good with machines, but Cathara's enhanced senses let them solve problems he never could have tackled alone. She could hear structural fatigue in metal before it showed on scanners. She could smell chemical reactions going wrong in sealed systems. She could sense electromagnetic fields with an accuracy that made most instruments look primitive. In return, Marcus had taught her to think like an engineer. Every machine had weak points, but they also had elegant solutions waiting to be discovered. The same analytical thinking that let her track prey through hostile territory worked perfectly for tracing complex technical problems to their source. Their reputation had grown with each successful job. When the hegemony's flagship suffered a cascade failure in its quantum drives, they'd called for Marcus and Cathara. When the Trade Guild's most secure facility was threatened by a rogue AI, they'd been the ones to talk it down. When a generation ship carrying 1 million refugees had started losing life support in deep space, they jury-rigged a solution using spare parts and pure stubbornness. Each success had brought new opportunities and new challenges. Lady Veltar had tracked them down 3 weeks ago on a mining station in the outer reaches. The proud Nixarian noble had swallowed her pride and offered them a contract that would set them up for life. "The consortium is planning something," she'd explained. "A new type of weapon that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. My sources indicate it involves technology from the deep archives, things that were buried for good reasons." Marcus had agreed to investigate, partly because the money was incredible, but mostly because he was curious. The deep archives were legendary among engineers, a collection of technologies so dangerous that the galaxy's major powers had agreed to lock them away permanently. Now they stood outside the crystalline collective's vessel, and Marcus felt his excitement building. The crystalline beings were silicon-based life forms who thought in ways that carbon-based species could barely comprehend. Their technology operated on principles that most engineers considered impossible. "Remember," Marcus said as they boarded the ship, "they communicate through harmonic resonance. Let me do the talking unless they address you directly." Cathara's scales shifted to a respectful silver color. She'd learned diplomatic protocols for over a dozen species, adapting her predatory instincts for negotiation rather than hunting. The ship's interior was like walking inside a giant geode. Crystalline formations grew from every surface, pulsing with patterns of light that served as both decoration and data storage. The air hummed with harmonics that Marcus could feel in his bones. Captain Prism of 7 Lights materialized from a cluster of crystal formations, their form shifting between solid matter and structured energy. Communication with the crystalline collective required specialized equipment, But Marcus had learned to read their basic emotional states from the way their light patterns fluctuated. Gratitude acknowledgement for response arrival, Prism sang through the translation device. Problem crisis exceeds understanding capability of crew collective. Marcus bowed in the formal manner the collective preferred. Honor privilege to assist serve. Please explain problem nature. What followed was a technical description that would have baffled most engineers in the galaxy. The collective's quantum crystalline drives operated by resonating with the fundamental frequency of space-time itself. Somehow that resonance had become corrupted, trapping them between dimensions. Cathara's ears pricked up as Prism explained the symptoms. Her enhanced hearing could detect patterns in the ship's harmonic emissions that the translation device couldn't process. "Marcus," she said quietly, "there's something else here. A secondary resonance that doesn't match the ship's normal patterns." Marcus nodded and pulled out his scanner. What he found made his blood run cold. "Captain Prism, when did you last visit Consortium space?" The crystalline being's light patterns shifted to confusion concern. 7 cycles passed, trade exchange with Consortium research facility for rare minerals. "And did they install any new equipment? Any gifts or additions to your systems?" "Small harmonic enhancer for drive efficiency. Consortium claimed offered improved performance." Marcus and Cathara exchanged looks. They'd seen this pattern before. The Consortium had a habit of giving gifts that were actually sophisticated monitoring devices. "Captain, I need to examine this enhancer immediately. Your ship isn't just trapped between dimensions, it's being used as a test subject." What they found in the ship's core confirmed Marcus's worst fears. The harmonic enhancer was definitely Consortium technology, but it incorporated elements that made his engineer's instincts scream warnings. Crystalline matrices that shouldn't exist. Energy patterns that seemed to bend space-time in ways that violated basic physics. "This is deep archive technology," Marcus breathed. "They're using your ship to test weapons that were banned for good reasons." Cathara crouched beside the device, her scales shifting through a pattern that Marcus had learned meant extreme caution. "It's unstable. The dimensional trap isn't an accident. It's building toward something bigger." A cascade failure, Marcus realized. If this device overloads while the ship is trapped between dimensions, it could tear a hole in space-time itself. He started working immediately, his hands flying over the complex controls while Cathara monitored the device's emissions. The technology was beyond anything he'd encountered before, but the basic principles were still recognizable. Every machine, no matter how exotic, followed certain rules. "Marcus," Cathara said urgently, "we have company." A Consortium battlecruiser had dropped out of hyperspace and was moving toward them. Marcus's scanner showed multiple weapons powering up. "They're not here to help," he said grimly. "They want to watch the test to completion, even if it kills everyone on this ship." Captain Prism's light patterns flared with anger rage. "Consortium betrayed violated treaty agreement. Crystalline Collective remembers records all." Marcus continued working on the device, while Cathara watched the approaching ship. "How long until weapons range?" he asked. 3 minutes, she replied. "But Marcus, there's something else. I can sense other ships moving in hyperspace, Nixarian vessels coming fast." "Veltar," Marcus grinned. She must have been tracking Consortium movements too. The next few minutes were chaos. The Consortium ship opened fire just as a Nixarian battle group dropped out of hyperspace. The crystalline ship shuddered under weapons fire while Marcus fought to stabilize the deep archive device. "Almost got it," he muttered, sweat beading on his forehead. "The cascade is building, but if I can reverse the harmonic pattern." An explosion rocked the ship, and sparks flew from the device's control panels. The dimensional trap was strengthening, pulling them deeper between realities. "Marcus," Cathara said quietly, "I have an idea, but you're not going to like it." She explained quickly, and Marcus stared at her in horror. That's completely insane. Even if it works, the feedback could kill you. Or it could save everyone on this ship and prevent the consortium from weaponizing deep archive technology, she replied calmly. Sometimes the hunt requires sacrifice. Before Marcus could stop her, Cathara placed her paws directly on the device's crystalline matrix. Her biomechanical scales began to resonate with the machine's frequency, using her body as a living harmonic dampener. The effect was immediate and terrifying. The device's chaotic energy began to stabilize, but Cathara screamed in pain as alien frequencies tore through her nervous system. Her scales flashed through every color in the spectrum and several that shouldn't exist. "Hold on!" Marcus shouted, working frantically to complete the shutdown sequence. "Just hold on!" Outside, the battle continued to rage. The Nyx-Aryan ships were winning, but the consortium vessel was fighting with desperate fury. The crystalline ship shook under repeated impacts, but the dimensional trap was weakening. Marcus slammed his hand down on the final control, and the deep archive device went silent. The dimensional trap collapsed, returning them to normal space. Cathara collapsed beside the now quiet machine, her scales faded to a dull gray. "Cathara!" Marcus dropped to his knees beside her, checking for vital signs. She was alive but unconscious, her body overwhelmed by the alien energies she'd absorbed. Captain Prism approached, their light patterns cycling through gratitude amazement. Impossible, unprecedented. Life form resonated with crystal technology at quantum level. How? Because she's not just a predator, Marcus said, gently stroking Cathara's gray scales. She's evolved beyond her original programming, just like humans have. She chose to risk her life for beings she'd never met because it was the right thing to do. The battle outside ended with the consortium ship's surrender. Lady Veltar contacted them directly, her image appearing on the crystalline display screens. "The consortium has been using deep archive technology to test new weapons," she reported. "Your evidence will be enough to bring their entire research program under galactic oversight." Marcus nodded, but his attention was focused on Cathara. Her scales were slowly returning to their normal blue color, and her breathing was becoming more regular. "We should get her to a medical facility," he said. "No need," Captain Prism sang. "Crystalline healing techniques compatible with biomechanical systems. We owe grateful for service sacrifice." Over the next few days, as Cathara recovered and the implications of the consortium's illegal research became clear, Marcus found himself thinking about the nature of partnership. He'd started this journey as a simple mechanic, trying to prove humanity's worth to a skeptical galaxy. Instead, he'd discovered something more important. The galaxy didn't need humans to be the strongest or fastest or most technologically advanced species. It needed them to be what they'd always been: adaptable, cooperative, and willing to find unconventional solutions to impossible problems. When Cathara finally woke up, her first words were, "Did we save them?" "We saved everyone," Marcus replied. "The crystalline ship, the battle group, probably half the sector if that device had gone critical." She stretched carefully, testing her systems. "Good hunt," she said with satisfaction. Marcus laughed and helped her sit up. "So what's next?" "Veltar says there are reports of strange signals from the galactic core. Something about machines that might predate known civilization." Cathara's scales shifted to interested orange. "Sounds like a job for a mechanic and his predator." "Partner," Marcus corrected. "You're my partner, not my pet." She bumped her massive head against his shoulder affectionately. "Same thing, human. We hunt together now." As they prepared to leave the crystalline ship, Marcus couldn't help but smile. The galaxy was vast and full of mysteries, but he had the best possible companion for exploring them. Together. They were something neither humans nor Nyx-Aryans had ever been alone. A perfect synthesis of human ingenuity and predatory instincts. adapted for a universe that was stranger and more wonderful than either species had ever imagined. The stars called and they answered together, riding into the galaxy on a friendship that had begun with attempted murder and evolved into something the universe had never seen before. Humanity had found its place among the stars not by being the strongest, but by being the most willing to change, to adapt, and to see potential partners where others saw only predators or prey. The hunt would continue, but now it was a hunt for knowledge, adventure, and the endless possibilities that awaited them in the vast reaches of space.